Here we are in one of our grow rooms, and it's harvest day. These shiitake look amazing. They look basically like they're at their prime and they're ready to go. So it's a nice looking mushroom. I like to kind of harvest when the caps are still enrolled a little bit, so they're still a little bit curled under, and it makes the mushroom last, or it holds up longer in the fridge. You get more shelf life out of it, and nice meaty texture. So, and I'll just harvest the mushrooms just by simply cutting as close to the base of the block as possible. And we have a lot of just like medium to average size shiitake growing, and a lot of people seem to like our baby shiitake or our smaller shiitake. This is a bigger harvest for today. Shiitake always takes us more time than really any mushroom that we grow, just because you have to cut each mushroom off one by one. And so yeah, it just takes a little bit more time. Let's see. Every direction, 360 degrees all the way around. So I'll just kind of prune the bottom so I'm not ripping off mushrooms when I take the block off. Basically, the shiitake mushroom prefers to grow without the bag, due to the fact that the mycelium basically forms this it's called popcorning. It popcorns real heavy, and then it forms this real brown layer to kind of protect and insulate the mycelium. And then the mushrooms will just pop all the way up, all the way around. If you try fruiting it in the bag, you'll get a bunch of mushrooms growing all up against the bag, and you'll get a bunch of deformed looking mushrooms, and basically mushrooms that are not good quality compared to just letting it grow all the way around like this. So yeah, the grow room provides basically the perfect balance of moisture, airflow, and lighting and temperature in order to get the mushrooms in their optimum environment to produce the best quality fruit bodies. So usually we put the blocks in here, and the humidity is basically set to a higher level, usually about 90 to 95%, and basically the mushrooms will start pinning within a few days. You'll start to see a bunch of little baby mushrooms forming all over the block. We'll keep the humidity between 90 to 95% for a couple days, and then during the last couple days of the fruiting cycle, we'll kind of drop it down into the 80s to let the mushrooms kind of dry out a little bit, and that increases the shelf life, so they're not kind of getting too wet and soggy when you put them in the fridge. Pretty easy once you get it dialed in. We make sure that we remove the old CO2 and spores, so those are exhausted out of our grow room into the outside, and then we bring in a bunch of fresh air, filter it 2 times, and bring it into our grow room and kind of condition it with the humidity to make sure that we're getting everything we need in here for the environment for our mushrooms. Without the grow room, the mushrooms would basically dry out. As the mushrooms grow, they extract water from the substrate, and the high humidity basically prevents the mushrooms from simply drying out and evaporating as they grow. Currently, we can see like little clouds of spores just drifting off of these mushrooms. And these mushrooms produce billions of spores to basically continue the fruiting cycle. The oyster mushrooms, the spore load can be pretty harmful. It can cause like allergies and stuff like that. So we do wear spore masks when we're in here. I'm just not wearing one right now, so you guys can hear me and I can speak to you. The shiitake spores, they're not too harmful. I haven't had any issues being in here with them. You can get, a stuffy nose maybe at the end of the day. Oyster mushrooms you do want to be aware of, because they produce such a high amount of spores that if you are exposed to them over a long term, maybe 10 years, you could develop an allergy to the spores down the line, where you just can't be around the mushroom at all. Otherwise, you'll start experiencing intense sneezing attacks and shortness of breath, and it's just not pleasant. So yeah, make sure you're wearing your masks if you're growing your mushrooms, so you can filter out all those spores and protect your lungs. So yeah, with the shiitake mushroom, I mean, some growers don't do this, but we found that it increases the efficiency of the mushroom, and also just gives us a better overall flush. In nature, it was first discovered that the shiitake mushrooms could be grown when they would cut down logs which shiitake mushrooms were growing already on and soak them in water. So what we do is, as our blocks are ready to go in the grow room, we slap our blocks with our hands to basically simulate the tree falling in nature to shock the mycelium into growing. Once the tree or branch would hit the floor, the mycelium would be shocked into producing the mushrooms because it's basically thinking that its life cycle is coming to an end. So yeah, we give our blocks a really nice smack on all sides, and from there we throw them in our grow room, and that gives us this really nice pin set where we just get mushrooms all over the block, and we're really happy with that. So yeah, and then when it comes time to harvest, then we just basically cut each mushroom right off and into our tray, and then from there we can go ahead and pack everything in the next warehouse and get everything to the desired weights in our cases and get them into cold storage. Shiitakes have quite a good shelf life. Once harvested, the mushrooms generally last 2 to 3 weeks. Oyster mushrooms have the shortest shelf life. Usually we're seeing those in about 7 days. They're really no longer marketable. We can take those home and eat them ourselves, or possibly dry them and turn it into another product. Shiitake has a long shelf life, and lion's mane, that one goes for about 2 weeks, we've found. So yeah, generally with most of our mushrooms, we're getting about 2 weeks out of the mushrooms before they are no longer marketable. So we're just specializing in wood-loving species, so species that basically decompose hardwood in nature. You'll find them growing off like fresh trees or the recently fallen trees. And those strains are like shiitake, oyster mushrooms, more of the medicinal species such as reishi, turkey tail, lion's mane. You'll find maitake growing on oak or in certain hardwoods. We do king trumpet. We do two varieties of like king oyster. We do all of the oyster mushrooms throughout the year: pink, gold, pearl, blue, white. So those are all grown on our hardwood substrate. Shiitake mushrooms, of course, and creminis and button mushrooms and portobellos, those are secondary decomposing mushrooms. So those mushrooms desire like manure or compost-based substrates that basically we don't really like to, you wouldn't want to keep that stuff under the same roof. We wouldn't want to be growing specialty mushrooms in the same room that we're composting a bunch of manure, just because you don't want any kind of cross-contamination getting into your grows. We're able to get a really good entry into the mushroom industry with specialty mushrooms. A lot of people can start off with just oyster mushrooms, and you can grow those on really any agriculture waste, from straws to certain kinds of beddings to basically even newspaper and paper towels. I mean, oyster mushrooms are really aggressive. Coffee waste can be used. Just like a simple pasteurization of those substrates is really all that's needed for it to be effective. So it doesn't need to be expensive or a costly system to sterilize. But yeah, maybe one day we will do portobellos or buttons, but definitely really enjoy doing the gourmet and specialty mushrooms. All the colors, different shapes, sizes that you can get, and also the medicinal benefits that they offer are far greater than what you'd find in like a portobello or cremini mushroom or button mushroom. These are the mushrooms that contain those anti-cancer, anti-tumor benefits, those immunomodulating, immune system enhancing benefits. So these are the mushrooms that I like to eat, and I hope you do too.